Hello, this is Tony Kelly from Birmingham's Breakthrough TV, our Health is Our Wealth show. Today's guest is Vasco Stevenson, a holistic health practitioner from South London. Now, I've met Vasco Stevenson once. About 3 years ago, I went to an event hosted by Angela of Teams, and Vasco himself will explain what Teams means. But I met Vasco there, and we had a chat. And then when I was having difficulty finding enough men to come alongside the women on this program, Angela of Teams said to me, "You cannot get better than Vasco Stevenson." So welcome, Vasco Stevenson, to our Health is Our Wealth show. It's good to have you from South London.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. Thank you for inviting me on your program. And kudos to Angie for giving me such a big up that you can't get anybody better than myself. I'm a modest person, so I have to say there are some people who are better than me, and I'm better than some. So I fit somewhere in the middle somewhere.
All right. Well, don't let Angela down. Okay. All right. Well, let's fire away. So first of all, the question I have to ask you is, and if you don't mind answering it, the name Vasco. Tell us how you came by that name and what does it mean?
To actually tell you what it means, I really don't know, but I'm from the island of Barbados, yes? And if you remember the old ancient history, that the Portuguese were the first there of all the Europeans, and they called the island Los Barbados, okay? Because they had fig trees there that had long roots coming down to the ground. And Los Barbados in Portuguese apparently meant the bearded one. So I don't know if somewhere in my mother's mind, she remembered that old bit of history. So she probably looked for a Portuguese name to give her third son, and that happens to be how I got my name Vasco. That I'm speculating here.
Okay. It might also have to do with, because I'm sure he's from the Portuguese side, Vasco da Gama, one of the explorers. We had Christopher Columbus. We also had Vasco da Gama as one of the explorers who came to the West Indies. So,
oh yes, a bit of a cutthroat and totally different from me. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And there was also another Vasco called Vasco Nunes de Balboa, who was allegedly the first European to walk across the Panama Canal from the Atlantic to the Caribbean.
I see. Right. We are instilling some history in the viewers here. That's good to know. Well done. Okay. Now, let's move on to you telling the viewers and listeners about your upbringing, your childhood. And that's open-ended. So you tell us, you mentioned Barbados. Tell us all about your early upbringing and childhood. Please.
Good grief. My early upbringing and childhood, I would say that it was not the happiest of all. But there were moments of fun and happiness. But I had some pretty strict but very poor parents. My parents actually worked on a sugarcane plantation. And, Barbados, the island was a plantocracy in those days, and sugarcane was the only major industry as such. And being very poor people, it was difficult. There were 8 of us in the family. My mother was extremely strict, and it didn't take much for her to get the whip out, let's put it that way. There were moments of good times because we lived near the sea and we could go swimming and fishing and doing everything that young boys used to do. But of course, we could never neglect our chores. And I had to walk 2 miles to school every day. I had to take out the sheep to the pasture and make sure the cow was fed and, other household chores like that. And then after school, you had to get back home early to do those chores again. So, 2 miles from 5 years old until I was about 11. So that was the early upbringing. But there were good times in between the harsh reality of my childhood.
Right. Now, Vasco, I'm going to ask you quite a straightforward question because I've had quite a few guests on this show so far, and quite a number of them have mentioned that they can swim. Now, you mentioned in the very first part of the interview about in Barbados going down to the sea and swimming. So that tells me you are a competent swimmer. Is that what you're saying to me? Yes or no?
Well, I can swim, yes. And how I learned to swim was my elder brother and my cousins. They would jump in the sea and they would swim far out, fairly far out. And I used to be on a rock, started watching them from the time I was a youngster. And suddenly one of them grabbed me up and said, "You want to swim here?" And just threw me in the deep end. So I had to swim.
Right. So you have helped to dispel the myth, Vasco, that's still out there to this day, that black people cannot swim. Here's another proof, viewers and listeners, as well as all the others who have come on my show so far, that black people can swim. Let's move on. I like the way in which they taught you to swim. So take us through schooling, education, please, Vasco.
Yes, well, when I was at primary school, I had the distinction of coming first every time in the class, no matter what they were talking about, right? And my parents were so poor, they couldn't really afford to send me to a secondary school. But I had a very good school teacher, a gentleman called Mr. Marville. And he actually rode his bicycle home to my parents' Chattel house and said, "Well, look, he comes first in everything, whether it's English or maths or whatever. And I know you can't afford it, but you got to try." So my elder brother was actually going to private lessons. That's where the money was going, what little there was. But instead of going to the lessons, he would stop and play cricket and football or what have you. So my mother made a decision that, he really isn't taking advantage of the situation that was offered to him. So the next best thing to do is try the next in line, and that was me. My father had a completely different attitude. His attitude was, I grew up cutting cane, and if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for my children. So I really owe a debt to my mother, who incidentally passed in 2008 at the age of 96. And I have a debt to her really for trying, to give me an education.
And where did that education take you to?
Well, it was a primary school called Sealer Boys School in the parish of St. Lucie in Barbados, as far from the town as you can get. I'm a rank country boy, and I'm proud of it, okay? And then when I passed my 11 plus, I then went to a secondary school called Coleridge and Parry in the next parish of St. Peter. And that's where I did my O-levels. And after passing my O-levels, I went into the Barbados Teaching Service at the age of 19 and spent 3 years there and then came to England.
Right. And just for some of the younger viewers, those O-levels from the Caribbean, they were actually set and marked here in Britain. Is that correct?
Yes, by the Oxford and Cambridge board. The O-levels and A-levels at that time were far more difficult than what a lot of youngsters have to contend with today.
I'd agree with you. What age did you end up coming to Britain, and who did you come with? Because you mentioned earlier in the interview about 8. Your mom and dad, your parents had 8 of you. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So take me through the transition coming into Britain. And when did you come?
I started teaching at a school, and a new headmaster came to the school. And to be quite honest, I never got on with him because I don't like the idea of hitting people. And in Barbados, they still had this very Victorian approach to discipline. You do the slightest thing wrong, nobody will say, "Hey, that's wrong," and tell you why it was wrong and correct you that way. They would get a cane out and bash you, and I was not in favor of that. And an incident took place at the school one day. There was a rule that you shouldn't throw stones. And this headmaster had his 9-year-old son who used to come to the school, and he threw a stone at a boy. And this other boy made an attempt to throw a piece of hard mud back at him, and he promptly ran off and told his father that this other boy had thrown a stone at him. Completely reversed the story. And the headmaster called in this boy and gave him a good hiding. And there were all these marks down his back. So I went to the headmaster and I said, look, there's been a great miscarriage of justice here. I saw what happened and I relayed to the headmaster what I had seen. Well, he preferred to take the side of his 9-year-old son against me. So what I did, the boy who had been beaten, I gave him a note and I asked him to tell his father to come up to the school and have a conversation with me, which didn't go down well with the headmaster. So apparently what was happening subsequent to that incident is that I then started getting bad reports being sent to the Ministry of Education every term about my performance. I said, look, the best thing is to go to England. And the quickest way out of Barbados to get to England was to come on London transport. So I made all the arrangements and came to England on London transport. And I drove trains on the underground for about 7 years.
So what year did you arrive here?
Yes, 1964.
At that stage, you didn't think you were teaching back in Barbados. You didn't think of going back into teaching when you arrived here, or that wasn't an avenue option open to you?
No, it was an option that was open, but I looked at it and I thought, no, I really don't want to go there. But all the time I was on the underground, I was at Kilburn Polytechnic, furthering my education and other stuff like that, doing my A-levels and what have you. And then at the age of 25, I made a decision, and you wouldn't believe it, but I actually got married. I went to work then for an insurance company, spent a few years with that company, and then moved to a different company where I was a branch manager for that insurance and investment company.
Yes, you got married at age 25, which is, in those days, that was considered to be a fairly young age to do that.
It was indeed.
Were there any children of that union?
Yes, I got 2 children, a boy and a girl. And ironically, when my son was 8, I have never missed a parent-teachers meeting, yes, with my children. Never, ever missed one of them.
That's an important message to get out there.
It's of paramount importance, yes, absolutely. And I was living in the London borough of Ealing at the time. And I remember going to one of these parent-teachers meeting, and my son, I was teaching him at school, and he was so far ahead of his class that he started to get a bit bored, okay? And I went to one of these meetings, and I don't remember whether it was the form teacher or the headmistress, but one of the teachers, looked at me and said that my son was educationally subnormal.
Are you kidding me?
I'm deadly serious, sir. Well, I am not given to using 4-letter words and being abusive, but that's not my nature, okay? But I remember the exact words I said to her, and those words were, and I quote, "I don't use 4-letter words, but take it from me, I just told you one."
Wow.
Right? Now, I went home and I said to my wife, I explained to her what had happened. And she said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I have an answer for this already. Now, in Ealing, there was a very, very good comprehensive school that had just gone from being a grammar school to comprehensive. And I walked into the school and asked to speak to the headmaster. And his secretary was being very, obstructive. And suddenly from nowhere, this white-haired man appeared and asked her if she was all right. And she said, "Oh, I'm fine, headmaster, I'm fine." And of course, I rushed to him. "Are you the headmaster?" "Yes." And introduced myself, explained to him why I was there. Of course, I was properly attired, had a suit and a tie and everything like that on, first impressions and all that. And he looked me up and down. I explained to him why I had come. And he looked at me and he said, and I quote, "Mr. Stevenson, if you're the kind of parent that can take a day off from your work to come and see about your son's education, I will take him in my school." My son went on to be the deputy head. He did his bachelor's in economics. Then he got a job with Walt Disney at that time, paying $50,000 a year. He spent 7 years there, did his master's in IT, packed up that job, and he's been working for himself ever since in IT.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Then my daughter, now she's at the same primary school, and I'm attending the parent-teachers meeting, and the same school teacher who told me that my son was educationally subnormal, I bumped into her and she said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Stevenson. I hear that Clifford is doing quite well at Ealing Green Comprehensive." I said, "Not really, you know. He is still educationally subnormal." And I walked off.
Wow. Even before we get any further, just that bit alone, which I'm hearing for the first time, Vasco, there's a book within you. You need to write your memoirs.
There are several books, and I'm writing one now, believe it or not. But I've got about 12 books in me that I need to write before I depart this scene.
Yes, well, I'm going to urge you to get on and do it. Right. That's such a lovely feel-good story where you're showing as a black man determination, the fact that I'm from a teaching background, and you made sure as a parent to go to the parents Teachers Association meetings and see how your son's getting on. We as black people need to take a leaf out of your book. In so doing, invest in our children's education. Don't just send them off to school and say, "Oh, it's up to the teachers to mold them and bring them up." And don't go and see how they're getting on at parents' evenings and so on. You've done the right thing. And I take my hat off to you for doing that. And I'm sure your son must be so happy and proud of the fact that you led by example. I can't acknowledge that more.
Tony, you must remember that those of us who come from the Caribbean, the school system, the teaching system was completely different from here. Mm-hmm. Yes. I remember teachers used to have pride. My school beat your school, and they would have these debates between them, and they took pride in teaching, yes, their class. And there was this subtle competition between different schools and all of that. And parents could actually trust the teachers.
Vasco, let's move on a bit, coming back to yourself now. You've mentioned some of the jobs you had in the earlier days of you arriving in Britain from Barbados. Take us through other jobs you've had, whether in the paid sector or the voluntary sector, over time.
Well, I haven't had that many. When I left the first insurance company, I went to the second insurance and investment company. I joined as a manager, then I became a branch manager. And what happened there is that I ran a team of 25 people that I recruited and trained myself. And I was given a target. And every year, if your team hit the target, you would get 2 tickets to go to some exotic location for 1 week. And I had the honor of visiting some pretty interesting places and staying in the #1 hotels in those places like Singapore, Malaysia, Rio, Boca Raton in Florida, Scottsdale in Arizona. I even got a paid trip on the Orient Express, and that was quite fascinating. I did cruises in the Mediterranean, all of that kind of stuff. I joined a smaller company in Southeast London as well, and we were doing tenant referencing. So if you were a landlord and you had property to let out and you wanted your tenants vetted, we would then do that, and we would give you a warranty that should a tenant default on the rent, we would pay the rent. Unfortunately, last September, because of all these market changes, we had to wind it up last year, September.
Just take me back to current times for a moment. your immediate family, so who is within your immediate family now, and how have you supported each other during this whole pandemic and lockdown?
Well, I live by myself. Um, my son and his partner, they live in West London. My daughter and her partner and her three children, they also live in West London. My elder granddaughter is currently at Leicester University. Uh, and my grandson, he's just turned 16, and there's a little one who is 7.5. And I have had, I see them, I travel from South London to West London to see them every other week, so at least twice a month. Uh, because my intention was that while they are young, I have to try and influence their characters, in a positive way. As a granddad, and I'm there supporting and encouraging them all the time, buying them books, a lot of books with Black images, books by Black authors, that kind of thing, because this is all part of their education and conditioning.
But during we had the first lockdown in March. Were you
Yes.
able to see them, or was it just by Skype or social media contact?
Yes, it was mainly by telephone, um, and chatting to them and encouraging and saying, well, look, don't be despondent and don't worry too much. Everything is going to work out well, but just stay calm. And of course, my calls then became more regular because of the you know, existing social conditions. And yeah, everybody came through it fine. But my little granddaughter, the younger one, she was a little bit bemused because the first time I was allowed to go and see her in person, you remember you could see the person, but there was no hugging and no physical contact and all of that. And she appeared to be somewhat bemused that here was granddad and she couldn't give him a hug or say, and she just stood up and looked at me. And I said, don't worry, it'll soon be over. And the first time that, the things were said, you could now go and hug, I got perhaps one of the biggest hugs around. She was really delighted to be able to hug her granddad again. And that's my relationship with my grandchildren, especially. I just love them to bits.
Okay, I need to come back and focus on you now. We are in lockdown. There's lots of people out there, Black people, all ethnic groups, but Black people in particular, living on their own, whether aged, whether vulnerable, whether single, on their own. How are you coping with this lockdown in terms of keeping mind, body, and soul ticking over? What advice would you give to people in a similar situation to you where you're on your own? How are you managing, especially from a mental health and physical health angle?
Right. Now, one of the things I do quite regularly is meditate. Okay. I go within myself. And remember, a lot of my life has been spent on my own, out and about, working, selling, doing this, that, and the other. And even when I was married, let's put it this way. From the time I was a youngster, I spent a lot of time on my own. I don't know why, but I would be in a crowd and yet not part of that crowd. So I don't know if this was something that has to do with my psyche, my spirituality, or what have you. Okay. But I meditate quite a lot. I encourage people to meditate quite a lot because we are living in a time where we have to understand who and what we are. And we are, to my mind, spiritual beings having a human experience. So we have to make connections, and these are non-physical connections, connection with ourselves, connection with others, and mental and emotional connections, connections with nature, connections with the cosmos, all of that. I believe all of that, and my meditations, and I have a very dear friend, a lady friend who is 35 years in the church, and she phones me up regularly, and we have these serious conversations about esoterics and the Bible and other things like that. And that has been the main stay in helping me, maintain my sanity, so to speak.
Okay. Let me then move on. I introduced you at the beginning as somebody who is into holistic medicine.
Yes.
I need you to openly talk more about that. I'm talking that in the sense of we know black people are more susceptible to cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney failure, dementia, lack of vitamin B, and heart disease. Now, you come from a holistic angle. Tell the viewers and listeners, what does that entail? What's that all about?
Now, this coronavirus disproportionately affects Black people. Some people say it does, others say it doesn't, okay? And the school of thought that says it does says, okay, it's because of serious underlying conditions. We are more prone to diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. And one of the reasons for that is because living in this environment in which we live, even prior to COVID, is a stressful experience for Black people. We have to cope with racism, we have to cope with lots of other things that are not conducive to good health. And so we are stressed out. And when you're stressed, okay, that gives rise to inflammation in the body. And inflammation is the root cause of about 99% of disease. So when we talk about high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, kidney problems, Alzheimer's, and all of that, we can actually go back firstly to stress and take it from there. So if people were to be able to address the question of stress, and meditation is one of the best ways that you can de-stress yourself. And if more people were meditating, going within themselves, radiating affection and love, firstly for themselves and then for other people, you would find that these incidences of ill health would drop off quite dramatically. I'm not suggesting, of course, that that's a panacea and everything is going to be cured. What I'm saying is the rates would go down. The second aspect to this is diet and lifestyle. Yep. If we are not eating the correct herbs and spices and eating non-nutrients, as they're called, food that really has no benefit to the physical body, non-nutrients, people call it fast food and junk. Notice I didn't use the word food after the word junk. So it's not food, it's junk. Because food is meant to be nourishing, and if it's not nourishing, then it's not food, okay? And we eat a lot of that. And unfortunately, our youngsters, and not only our youngsters, but youngsters from other cultures as well, are getting hooked into this paradigm of eating, junk, fast food, which again is not conducive to good health. So apart from the stress aspect of this, we look at the physical aspect, which is what we take into our bodies, okay? And if we were to get a little bit esoteric and say, your body is a temple and you have to keep it in a pristine condition, then we would really look at what we're eating and what we are putting into our bodies.
Yes, I agree with all that's just been said. You mentioned meditation. I'm going to take that a bit further, breaking it down for the viewers. Do you think, what's your view in terms of yoga and Pilates? Are those the forms of meditation you're talking about?
They're not the forms of meditation I'm talking about, but they are complementary to good health, okay? I'm talking about, let me bring the Bible into play a little bit, okay? Because I read the Bible quite a lot, but not from a religious perspective. The Bible says, go within yourself. The kingdom of God is within, all right? You have to practice the third eye. All of that comes into play. So really what this means is you go into yourself, you take no thought, as the Bible says. So when you go into meditation, you try to empty your mind and think of nothing, okay? Thoughts will come in, but you don't dwell on them. Let them come in and go out. And over a period of time, you'll find that you can sit down there and meditate, and you become what is known as an airhead, because there's nothing in there. And that is what the Bible says when Jesus, in inverted commas, say, I'll meet you in the air. It doesn't mean that you're going to rise up from the grave and go like a 747 up in the air, okay? Because remember, the kingdom of God is within, and that's where the connection is made.
So the idea of people worrying and fretting, you're saying simply, how I understand it is, we need to clear our mind of all of that garbage and rubbish that is up there. Clear our minds of it, and stop this worrying and fretting, and then which then leads into depression and anxiety. That's your view in terms of mental health then.
That's correct. I remember a lot of the people who will be watching this video are people who go to church regularly. But in the Bible as well, that's why I'm talking about the Bible, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things shall be added. Yes? So if you meditate and seek the kingdom of heaven first, you have such peace, such clarity of vision, such clarity of thought, that any issue or problem that arises, you should then be able to assess that in a clear-minded and calculated way and address it as it should be addressed. That is my take on it, yeah?
Let's still on the holistic theme.
Yeah.
Are there any medicines or substances or natural herbs or remedies you're into with this holistic theme, apart from the meditation which you spoke about just now? What else is there from a holistic point of view one needs to bear in mind in terms of alternative medicine as opposed to big pharma taking tablets and more tablets?
Okay, let me begin to answer that by giving a quotation from the late great Nikola Tesla. I don't know if the name rings a bell with you, Nikola Tesla. Right. He is was one of the greatest scientists the world has ever seen. But a lot of people don't know about him because a lot of his work was suppressed. Okay. One of his inventions was of such a magnitude that had it been rolled out, every person on the planet could have free electricity as long as they live. And all the indications are that depending on what happens now, there's that possibility still arising. But he, among his comments and his quotations, was one that I'm going to read. And I quote, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all of the previous centuries of its existence." End quote. So we're talking here about the non-physical aspect of good health. Okay, it is not simply a question of slash, cut, and burn and give you a few pills and here have some medicine where the side effects are worse than what you're trying to treat. You have to look at the psychological aspect, the social aspect, all of these different aspects of human health. Okay, and when you do that, and you have an interview with someone and they're telling you what they believe ails them, quite often, if you can get rid of stress, if you can get their emotions under control, you'll find that you're halfway towards solving the problem. Okay? When it comes to actually helping people, I have 2 machines. These are Bioresidence Machines, where they scan the human body, okay, using vibrations, because everything in the universe vibrates at different frequencies. Okay, all your organs vibrate at different frequencies. And what these machines do, they assess how the organs in the body are vibrating. And when that machine assesses the vibrational speed or rate of those organs. It comes up on the computer. My client and I sit down, we see it, we know what organs are being tested. And then once that is finished, I will then write a protocol, a dietary protocol for that person, telling them what lifestyle changes and dietary changes they have to make in order to get their body back in as near to a pristine condition as they can get it. Herbs and spices, yes? Yeah, because herbs and spices vibrate at pretty high frequencies, okay? And meat, like dairy products, for instance, don't vibrate at all. So if your organs are supposed to vibrate at different frequencies and you are ingesting foods that don't vibrate, you're really not helping the vibrational properties of that organ. But herbs and spices and certain foods, sun foods, yes, your green stuff, your okras, your chocho, your cauliflower, your broccoli and spinach. All of these foods and fruits vibrate at higher frequencies. And of course, they come with minerals as well that benefit the body. But when you're eating junk, right, in a box, right, you're taking in something that is more addictive than cocaine. That's why it's so difficult to get youngsters off the box culture. Monosodium glutamate, lots of additives, preservatives, all these kind of different things. You really don't know what you're eating. And so the incidence of ill health is increasing throughout the world.
Vasco, this is fascinating stuff. I'm going to ask you to talk a bit now about social prescribing. It's a new buzzword. You've touched on some of the things that you do, which are actually social prescribing. But break down the words social prescribing for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, please, and your understanding, interpretation of it. Social prescribing.
My understanding of it is that the medical profession is getting around to understanding that every ailment cannot be cured by a pill or by an operation. Okay? There's no understanding that there's a non-physical aspect to health. And if by someone comes in with a major problem, and when it comes to social prescribing, we're talking here mainly about the elderly, yes, in most instances, and secondly, about mental issues. So they are then put into different groups. We haven't got a physical cure for this. So we're going to recommend you to a particular group of people who practice yoga or practice Pilates or meditation or something like that. The non-physical aspect of healing that Nikola Tesla referred to. And then people will join these groups, and by being in those groups, because mankind is gregarious, we need other people around us, yes, because their vibrations affect our vibrations. And if we get into a group where we get positive vibrations from people in that group, then that affects our vibrations positively. Our whole attitude changes, our physical being changes, and we have the potential then to recover from whatever ailment is afflicting us. And that is really what social prescribing is all about. Medical science saying, okay, we can't solve this problem physically. So you go into one of these groups and you do whatever that group is doing, and hopefully it will have a positive effect on your health challenge.
Thanks for that. Now, you mentioned that you do read the Bible quite a lot. You said you're not religious, but you do read the Bible because it does have some important aspects in it which you can understand and relate to. So
Yes.
I had a question here about, does your faith play an important role in your whole values, attitudes, and belief systems? Or are you of no particular faith? Where do you stand on the faith line, the religious line? Is what I'm.
It depends, Tony, on how you're using the word faith. Yes. If you're using the word faith to like
A
denominations, are you
religious persuasion. Are
Christian?
you a
Are
member
you
of a,
Jew?
Buddhist or from the
No,
Islam
no.
faith or
No.
Christianity or?
I am none of those. I am none of those. Yes, none of those. I have, to my mind, a one-to-one relationship with the Creator. That's why I meditate. Okay, a one-to-one relationship with the Creator. And remember earlier I talked about um, going within yourself, and the kingdom of God is within. That's why I have a one-to-one relationship with the Creator. I am not saying that people should not congregate and go to their church and pray, because praying is also important, because everything is vibrations. And when you pray, you're sending off, especially if you're in a group, you're sending off collective vibrations. Yes, vibrations of that group, uh, and that affects the world. And science is now beginning to admit that these things actually work. But because the medical industry and other industries employ so many people to roll out these different aspects of healing, would not run would not run in tandem with the medical system, because too many people would become unemployed if they were to roll out all these different aspects to healing. That's my take on it.
Okay. Now Vasco, I'm going to mention, there's no way I can read out all of these television stations and radio stations that you have appeared on in terms of as a presenter, as a host, etc., and institutions where you've engaged with audiences and done numerous PowerPoint presentations, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Tell us about some of those experiences. Share with us some of those experiences that you've had over the years, because you are known on the international scene and locally and nationally as well.
Nationally, back in the 1980s, round about 1983, 84, I became involved with an organization that specializes in the prostate. It was based in East London. It was called the Association for Prostate Awareness. And I got involved with that. And then I got further and further into different aspects of health. And this was about 16 years ago. I was the first Black person on BBC Radio 5. And that was aired in certain, I was talking about the prostate then, and that was aired in certain towns in areas where there were concentrations of African people. Yes, and when I say African, I'm included myself and you in that category. And it developed from there. And I, for about 15 years, I did 4 hours research every single day. I don't watch television, by the way. I have better things to do. Okay. And, I research and I get information from some of the top naturopaths in the world, cutting edge information. That's why I said that what I would have to say about a certain virus would be controversial, because some of these sources that my information come from do not believe that we're being told the truth about the virus. But that's another story. I'm not going to go there in detail. So I do a lot of research. And before I bring anything into the public domain, I have about 15 sources I get information from. I will still look at what every single one of those sources is saying about that information. And let's say 12 out of 15 are saying the same thing. Then once I've done my cross-referencing, I will say to myself, this is suitable for me to bring into the public domain. If 1 out of 15 or 2 out of 15 are saying it, I'll say, hold on, I am not going to do that. Okay. Now, in making my presentations, I've been up to Nottingham, Birmingham quite a few times, Coventry, Leicester, all over the place making presentations. I used to be a guest at Whittington Hospital in North London for the last 6, 7 years. That's now come to an end. But I have presented there on the prostate. I've been to Queen's Hospital in Essex, Romford in Essex, and I made a presentation there on the prostate as well. And I was quite pleased that the head of the hospital attended and sat in. And I'm going to stick my neck out here and be a little bit immodest and say that when he shook my hand, I found it difficult to get my hand out of his. He was that delighted with the presentation. I've been to Croydon University Hospital, which is just around the corner from where I am at the moment. I've done 2 presentations there, one on the prostate and one on diabetes. Okay, so I go all over the place. I've been doing quite a lot of webinars in this lockdown. And some of these webinars I'm doing are not health related. I also do Black history, aspects of Black history, and current events. And a lot of them are now about health and current events. One of my favorite Black history presentations is the number of West Indians who died when the Panama Canal was being constructed. I also do King Leopold and the Belgian Congo, the Herero genocide in Namibia, human zoos is another one. All of these are Black history presentations that I present. And on the esoteric side, I talk about understanding the Christ within, as above, so below. And one that when I first rolled it out over 3 years ago that I was going to be presenting on this, a lot of people, a lot of my friends and followers were a little bit touchy. And I said, don't worry about it. Come and hear what the presentation is about first, and then make your judgment afterwards. And after they heard the presentation, the one question they were all asking me is, when are you going to do it again? And the title of that presentation is The Spirituality of Sex.
Is that available? You're going to leave some contact details with us, so that might come into that afterwards. Where can they probably? Yeah. Right. But I'm going to go back from the things you've just mentioned. As a Black man, and I fit into that category as well, and there are going to be partners and spouses and wives listening to this. I have an issue with a lot of Black men are into denial, where they bury their head in the sand like the ostrich, the largest bird on the planet, and do not want to address health problems that they have. The prostate, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, if caught early, the cancer of the prostate gland, if caught early, is one of the easiest cancers to cure. What message at this point would you want to give, a simple message to Black men once they hit age around about 45 going upwards, about getting regularly checked for their prostate? What message would you send to people listening to this particular program, since you've done a lot of stuff on the prostate? Simple, straightforward message, please.
Right. Well, you've hit it in one, Tony. Have an MOT every year. I go and have an MOT every year. Okay. And when you're having that MOT, you should also say to whoever is taking the 2 vials of blood from you, I also want to have my PSA, prostate specific antigen, tested. Okay, so that's part of the blood test. And the one thing they do not do as a matter of routine is they do not offer a vitamin D3 blood analysis. So you also have to ask for that one as well. Okay. Because it's a little bit more intricate than just a normal test, it takes about a week longer for the results to come back. But every single man and woman, but in this instance, we're talking about men and the prostate, every single one should go and have not just the blood test, they should also have the digital rectal examination. And I find that a lot of men are somewhat homophobic where this is concerned. And yet the irony of it is, okay, if you don't want a male to do it, you can ask to have a female do it if you're more comfortable than that. And let's be fair about it. They're only putting a couple of digits of their fingers in your back passage. It will have a glove on it. It will have some lubrication on it. And what they're doing is actually feeling the outside of the prostate gland where 96% of the cancers occur. Okay? And they're feeling for rigidity or hardness. That does not mean that there's cancer there. It simply means that there's a tumor if there's any part that is hard or rigid. The only way then to find out if that tumor is cancerous is by way of having a biopsy. Okay? Now, a lot of men, they're having these issues, getting up in the night often to go to bed, urgency, erectile dysfunction, dribbling, all of these signs that the prostate gland is playing up, yet they're rather reluctant to discuss it, even with the person they're sleeping in bed with. Now, how can that be?
Yes. If in doubt, check it out. Yes, men need to hear this message. And you're very good, Vasco, in terms of how you said it. Back in the Caribbean, we used to call it stoppage of water.
Yes.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, yes. It's the same thing, yeah. But you said prostate cancer is a slow-growing cancer, but according to the Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is for the last 28 years or so classified as America's #1 hospital, when Black men have prostate cancer, unfortunately, it has a tendency to become aggressive. Yes, nobody knows why, or they know why, they haven't said, but this makes it even more imperative that Black men should go and have their prostates tested early, from the time they get to, I would say, between 40 and 45 now. Yes, right. Because all of these degenerative diseases are showing up in younger and younger people. So the earlier you go and get checked out, the better, and the greater your chances of overcoming that particular health challenge, whatever it is.
Right, thanks for that. Let me just move on to an issue here whereby you lead such a busy life, Vasco. It's quite busy, hectic, if I can say so myself from this end. I thought I was busy, but you're 10 times busier than me. What do you do? You mentioned meditation, but what other forms of hobbies, leisure pursuits do you have to chill out and relax?
I love music. I do radio every Sunday morning from 10 to 12. This is my 6th year there now. And I'm about to take up another role on another radio station. That can happen anytime now. Because that's part and parcel of my way of getting information out to people. Okay, I have a website called blackhealth.co.uk. Needs a little bit of upgrading now. It needs bringing to the modern age, the 21st century. But the information is there, and there's information and articles going back to 2014. Okay, so a lot of health, and it's mainly.
Let me ask you, what's the name of the radio station in case people want to start listening into your 6-year going radio station that you're on, the 2-hour show? What's that one called?
It is oneharmonyradio.com.
And it's on
ONE Harmony Radio, that's all one word, .com.
And when does it broadcast?
Every Sunday morning.
Right, okay. And I also like to ask you, what genre of music are you into?
Well, I'm into what is classified as big people music. Back in time, the soul music, rhythm and blues. I love Spanish music, merengues. I love calypsos. Coming from the southern part of the Caribbean, I very well understand that.
Yes, I was expecting that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything like that. And I'm an avid reader as well.
Right.
Okay, I will read anything except pornography.
And I like, you said earlier in the interview, you don't watch television.
Yeah.
That there's not many people who fit into that category. Some people are glued to the goggle box 24/7. I like the fact that you find other things to occupy your time, and that's to be applauded.
I'll tell you something, Tony. I get a lot of pleasure out of helping people. And, you know, when people talk to me, and some don't actually become my clients as such, they just phone me up and say, oh, I enjoyed that conversation. I enjoyed that presentation you made. And I chat with them, you know, about themselves and about their families and about I just love talking to people.
And it's not all about making money.
Sorry?
It's not all about making money.
No. You see, you know, there's a saying, if you cast your bread on the waters, it will come back after many a day.
Indeed.
A little bit waterlogged, but it comes back, yeah?
We're coming to the end now. If people want to get in touch with you, you have mentioned your Black Health website. If you want to mention that again, and are there any other social media outlets where people can get hold of you, or whether email address or phone number, if you so wish? Now is your chance to make the viewers aware of them.
My telephone number, 0772 556-7262. My email address, vascostevenson@yahoo.co.uk. My website, you can contact me via the website as well, blackhealth.co.uk. I'm also on WhatsApp. I post so much stuff on WhatsApp, especially relating to what's going on now in the world. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, but I don't use them. I'm on Facebook. I'm thinking of coming out of Facebook.
Okay, thanks for that, Vasco. Now, I want to end by you leaving with the viewers and listeners your final thoughts on this Breakthrough TV, Our Health is Our Wealth show. Just share with us some final thoughts that you would want to the viewers and listeners to take on board.
Right. The final thought is this. Always be positive. Nothing is ever as it seems. Okay? Always trust your instincts. Go within yourself. And if you get a gut feeling about anything, that is where you should go. Okay? Be courteous to other people. Radiate love and affection. Be understanding. And you'll find that the universe will bless you if you show well-being and love towards anybody. And when I say anybody, I'm putting that in red and in underline and in capitals. Anybody, whether they are white, pink, green, yellow, whatever. Yeah. So for your own development, your own spiritual development, for your own vibrational development, you cannot hold animosity towards anyone. You have to get your emotions out of the way. I know a lot of us, because we're descendants of people who were enslaved, we are still carrying that emotional trauma. And the only way we are going to heal is to get it out of our system.
Right. Vasco, and I'll tell you your full name, Vasco Stevenson, holistic health practitioner from South London. Angela of Teams, your good friend, she was right when she said, this man will be able to tell you and your listeners all about health, well-being, etc. It was a pleasure having you in the Birmingham's Breakthrough TV, Our Health is Our Wealth studio here, giving to us all of these hints and tips and advice about what you're doing out there to make the world a better place. You're living proof that, yes, black people are out there getting on doing their thing, unsung heroes and heroines. I've really enjoyed, I've learned so much from you today that I'm going to have to put on board. I thought I was doing well, but you put me to shame in some of the things that you've said to us. But it was a pleasure having you on the show. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming.
To share information and knowledge with your viewers. And I hope it's not the last time. I'm sticking my neck out here saying, next time around, please.
Yes, indeed. To be continued. TBC. To be continued. Take care. Stay safe and walk good, as we would say in Jamaica. That's a term we use in Jamaica. Walk good. Stay safe.
Right.
All right. Nice speaking to you. Thanks to our sponsors, the Afro-Caribbean Millennium Center on Dudley Road, New Style Radio, 98.7 FM, Breakthrough Media Studios, and Breakthrough TV.